I came home to my $8 million reservoir, but HOA had already drained it dry. I came back expecting water. Still, quiet, exactly where I left it. Instead, I found cracked earth, dead fish, and tire tracks where my $8 million reservoir used to be. No warning, no call. Just gone. The HOA said it was aesthetic. I said nothing, at first. But what they didn't realize was, they hadn't drained a pond. They'd just exposed themselves. Stick with me. This one doesn't end the way they expected. And if you believe in standing your ground the right way, go ahead and subscribe. You'll want to see how this plays out. The gravel road felt the same under my tires. Same slow crunch. Same dust lifting behind me in a long, quiet trail. I'd driven that stretch more times than I could count over the last 12 years. Through late nights, early mornings, and more long work trips than I cared to remember. It always meant the same thing at the end of it. Home. No traffic, no noise, just land, water, and something I'd built with my own hands. I rolled past the last fence post at the southern boundary and eased the truck forward, letting the engine idle low. The sun was hanging just above the ridge, throwing long shadows across the meadow. For a second, I just sat there with the window down, breathing it in. Pine, dry grass, dirt that hadn't seen a drop of rain in weeks. It should have felt right. But something didn't. I couldn't place it at first. Not until I started up the slope toward the berm. That stretch of packed earth always gave me the same view, the reservoir opening up on the other side, catching the light just right. You could see the surface from a distance, a wide sheet of still water cutting through the land like it belonged there, like it had always been there. I crested the berm and hit the brakes so hard the truck jolted. For a second, my brain didn't register what I was looking at, because it didn't make sense. Where there should have been water, millions of gallons of it, there was nothing. Just a wide, empty basin stretching out below me. Cracked earth split into hard, uneven plates. The kind of pattern you only see after weeks of exposure, not hours, not days, weeks. I didn't move, didn't even reach for the door handle, just sat there, staring. The reservoir was gone, not low, not drained halfway. Gone. I opened the door slowly and stepped out, boots hitting gravel with a dull crunch. The wind moved across the empty basin, carrying a smell that shouldn't have been there. Rot. I walked to the edge of the berm, each step deliberate, like moving too fast might change what I was seeing. It didn't. The clay liner at the bottom had split open in long fractures, curling at the edges like dried paint. Scattered across the surface were fish, dozens of them. Some small, some big enough I recognized them without getting close. Trout I'd stalked myself. Dead, sun-bleached, left where they'd fallen. I stood there for a long moment, hands at my sides, saying nothing. The inlet lines were wrong. That's what pulled my attention next. I'd spent years designing that system, underground channels feeding the reservoir from 2 aquifers running beneath the property. Every pipe, every junction, every control valve had been placed with a purpose. Now the exposed ends of those lines were capped off with cheap brass fittings, not mine. The outlet control housing, steel reinforced, weather sealed, was pried open. The panel hung crooked, the internal systems gone. Just empty brackets and cut wires left behind. I walked down the slope, slow, careful. Halfway across the basin, I stopped again. Tire tracks, deep ones. Heavy equipment had been driven straight through the berm and down into the reservoir floor. Not once, not twice, over and over again. The pattern told the story without anyone needing to explain it. Pumps, drain trucks, sustained operation. I crouched near one of the tracks, brushing a hand across the hardened clay. It had been compacted, then baked. That meant time. Not a quick job. Not something done overnight. This had taken days, maybe weeks. I straightened and looked back toward the berm. Sections of the perimeter fencing had been cut clean through. Not broken. Not damaged. Cut. Whoever did this didn't sneak in. They came through like they had a right to be there. I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked the signal. 2 bars. Enough. I didn't dial right away. Just stood there, looking out across what used to be $8 million worth of engineered water storage. Years of permits, inspections, agreements with the county, all of it reduced to cracked dirt and dead fish. No warning, no notice. No one had called. No one had left a message. Nothing. I tapped the screen and pulled up the last inspection report. Passed. Clean. No issues. That was 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. I lowered the phone slowly. That timeline lined up too well with what I was seeing. This hadn't just happened. It had been happening while I was gone. Deliberate. Organized. Long enough that anyone paying attention would have known exactly what they were doing. I took a breath, slow and steady, and let it out. Anger was there. No point pretending otherwise. But it wasn't the kind that makes you shout. It was the kind that settles in your chest and stays there. Heavy, controlled. I turned back toward the truck, eyes scanning the perimeter one more time. The cuts in the fence, the tracks, the stripped equipment, no signs, no markings. Whoever did this hadn't bothered to hide it, which meant one thing. They didn't think they had to. I stopped at the base of the berm and looked back one last time. The whole basin stretched out in front of me, empty and silent, like something had been erased. I reached for my phone again. This time, I didn't hesitate, because one question had already settled into place. Clear, cold, unavoidable. Who would dare touch something this big and think they could get away with it? Ethan? The voice came from behind me, carried lightly over the berm. I turned and saw Megan Doyle standing near the fence line, one hand resting on the top rail. She looked like she'd been waiting, or maybe just hoping I'd show up sooner. I nodded once. Megan. She didn't step closer right away, just looked past me, down into the basin, and let out a slow breath like she'd been holding it in for days. I was wondering when you'd get back, she said. I followed her gaze back to the empty reservoir. You knew about this? It wasn't a question. She nodded. Yeah, everyone did. That settled heavier than anything I'd seen so far. Then start talking, I said. She walked up beside me, boots crunching on the dry edge of the berm. Up close, I could see the discomfort in her expression. Not guilt exactly, but something close to it. They said it was a landscaping issue, she began. HOA meeting about 6 weeks ago. Linda Carver put it on the agenda. I didn't say anything. She called it an unauthorized water feature. Said it didn't match the development standards. Said it was hurting property values along the west side. I let that sit for a second. Unauthorized, I repeated quietly. Megan gave a small, uneasy shrug. That's what she called it. And nobody thought to check what it actually was? She hesitated. That hesitation said more than her answer. There were questions, she said. A couple of board members pushed back, asked if they'd looked into permits, ownership, that kind of thing. And? Megan exhaled. Linda shut it down, said the HOA had jurisdiction over environmental presentation along the boundary, said it fell under aesthetic compliance. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I kept my eyes on the basin, How many voted for it? 3, she said. 2 against. 3-2. That was all it took. I glanced at the cut fence line again, then back at her. And they just started pumping? Not right away, she said. They brought in contractors the next week. Big trucks, pumps, the kind you see on city jobs. I pictured it. The equipment, the hoses, the sound of water being pulled out, hour after hour. How long? 3 weeks, Megan said. That matched what I was seeing. They worked during the day, she added. Most people were gone. Jobs, errands, normal life. By the time anyone really understood what was happening, it was already halfway down. And no one called me. Her jaw tightened slightly. Linda said you were never here. Said the property was basically unmanaged. I looked at her. She said that? Megan nodded. Said it was better to handle it now before it became a bigger issue. Before I could object, I said. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I turned back toward the basin and took a few steps along the edge. Megan followed, keeping a bit of distance like she didn't want to get too close to whatever this was becoming. They didn't just drain it, I said. They tore into the system, cut lines, pulled control units. I saw some of that, she admitted. They had crews down there most days. Linda came out a few times too. That made me stop. Came out? Yeah, Megan said. White SUV. Stood right up there on the ridge watching the pumps. Watching. I let that settle in. She knew exactly what was happening, Megan added quietly. This wasn't a mistake, Ethan. No, it wasn't. I took another slow breath, letting the air fill my chest and then out again. Did anyone try to stop it? I asked. Megan gave a small, bitter smile. It's an HOA, Ethan. People complain about mailbox colors. They don't step in front of trucks. That tracked. Anyone object on record? I pressed. I did, she said quickly. At the meeting. So did Mark Ellis. It's in the minutes. I nodded once. That mattered. Not for what it would change, but for what it would show later. Linda didn't care, Megan continued. She kept saying the same thing. We have authority. Over and over. Authority. I looked out over the empty basin again. They ever contact the county? I asked. Not that I heard, Megan said. Everything was handled through the HOA office. No permits, no oversight. Just internal decisions and outside contractors. That explained the fittings, the damage, the complete lack of process. They hadn't gone through anyone who would have stopped them. I pulled my phone out again and scrolled through a few contacts, then paused. Megan watched me. You going to call someone? Eventually, I said. She studied my face for a second, like she was expecting something else. Anger. Yelling. A reaction that matched what she'd seen happen. Instead, I slid the phone back into my pocket. You're not going down there? She asked. Already saw enough. That's it? For now. She frowned slightly. Ethan, I know what they did. I cut in, calm and even. I don't need to stand in it to understand it. That quieted her. The wind moved across the basin again, lifting dust in thin sheets that drifted over the cracked surface. The whole place looked wrong. Not just empty, but altered. Like something fundamental had been pulled out of it. They thought you wouldn't come back, Megan said after a moment. I looked at her. That's what Linda said, she added. Said you were always gone. That you didn't care about the land. I let that sit between us. Then I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. That was their first mistake, I said. Megan's expression shifted. Not relief. Not quite concern. Recognition. You going to fight this? She asked. I didn't answer right away, just turned and started walking back toward the truck. Each step felt steady, measured, like the decision had already been made somewhere deeper than words. Behind me, Megan called out, "Ethan, what are you going to do?" I stopped with one hand on the truck door and glanced back at the empty reservoir one more time. 3 weeks of work, 3 weeks of decisions, 3 weeks of someone believing they had the right to take something that wasn't theirs. I opened the door. "I'm going to find out exactly how far they think that authority goes," I said. Then I got in, shut the door, and started the engine. Because one thing was already clear. They hadn't just crossed a line. They'd done it slowly, confidently, and left a trail behind them the entire way. I didn't follow it right away. That's what most people would have done. Walk the perimeter, take pictures, start making calls from the edge of the damage. Try to piece it together while standing in the middle of it. I'd learned a long time ago that's how you miss things. So instead, I drove past the reservoir, past the berm, past the cut fence and the torn-out lines and everything that was still sitting there waiting to pull a reaction out of me. I went home. The house sat quiet at the far end of the property, same as always. Nothing looked different from the outside. No broken windows. No forced entry. No sign that anything had touched it, which meant this had been targeted. Not random. I stepped inside, set my keys down on the counter, and stood there for a second. The air inside still held that closed-up stillness you get when a place hasn't been lived in for a while. Nothing out of place, except the fact that everything outside was. I walked straight through to the back room, dropped my bag, and headed for the shower. Hot water, clean pressure, routine. I let it run longer than usual, not because I needed it, but because it gave me space to think without reacting. 3 weeks of pumping, multiple crews, heavy equipment, no permits I could see, no county markings, no state oversight. That ruled out anything legitimate. Which left one thing. Someone believed they had the authority to do it. I shut the water off, stepped out, and dried off without rushing. By the time I got dressed, the anger had settled into something more useful. Focus. I walked back into the main room, grabbed my phone, and pulled up Rachel Benton's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Ethan," she said. No surprise in her voice, just recognition. "You back in Colorado?" "I am," I said. "And we've got a problem." There was a brief pause. Not hesitation, calculation. "What kind of problem?" she asked. "Someone drained my reservoir." Silence on the line. Not disbelief. Rachel didn't deal in disbelief. "How much?" she asked. "All of it." Another pause. Longer this time. "Explain," she said. I did. Not everything. Just the facts. 3 weeks of activity, contractors, no notices, structural damage, equipment removed, fish dead, inlet lines capped, no permits in sight. When I finished, she didn't respond right away. "Who authorized it?" she asked. HOA, I said. President's name is Linda Carver. That changed the tone on her end. "An HOA drained a permitted reservoir?" she said, slower now. "That's what it looks like." "Looks like," she repeated. "Or is." "I'll confirm, but I've got a neighbor who sat through the vote, 3-2, framed it as an aesthetic issue." Rachel let out a quiet breath. Not frustration, anticipation. "All right," she said. "First thing, don't engage them yet." "Wasn't planning to." "Good. Second, document everything before anything gets touched. Photos, video, full perimeter, especially the damage points." "Already started." Third, we need to pull every record tied to that reservoir. State permits, county filings, inspection reports, water rights registration. I want a clean chain. I've got copies here, I said, and backups. I know you do, she replied. That's why I'm not worried yet. Yet. That word hung there for a second. Rachel, I said, they didn't just drain it. They tore into the system, pulled control units, cut lines. I figured, she said, which means this isn't just a property issue. No, it's going to be bigger, she added. I know. Another pause. Then, quieter, more deliberate. Ethan, don't go down there again tonight. I wasn't going to. Good. Because whatever this is, it's already past the point of being handled informally. That was the confirmation I needed. Not emotional. Legal. Give me 2 hours, she continued. I'll start pulling the filings from our side and flag anything that's immediately actionable. In the meantime, don't talk to the HOA. Don't answer calls. Don't respond to anything. Understood. And Ethan? Yeah. If what you're saying checks out. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I'd heard that tone before. It meant one thing. Someone had just made a very expensive mistake. I'll send you everything I've got, I said. Do that, she replied. And get some rest if you can. I will. We hung up. I set the phone down on the counter and stood there for a moment, looking out through the back window toward the rise of the berm in the distance. From here, you couldn't see the basin, just the outline of where it used to be. Quiet, normal, undisturbed. That was the part most people missed. Damage doesn't always look like chaos from far away. Sometimes it looks like nothing happened at all. I moved to the desk in the corner and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside were the originals, permits, registrations, inspection reports, engineering plans, every document tied to that reservoir, organized and sealed. I took out the State Water Resources registration first, stamped, approved, active, then the county environmental permit, then the contingency supply agreement, all intact, all clear, all completely outside the jurisdiction of any homeowners association. I set them out on the desk one by one, not to review them, just to see them, to remind myself exactly what this was. Not a pond, not landscaping, not something anyone had the right to touch. I leaned back in the chair and let the silence settle. No shouting, no pacing, no second-guessing, just a steady understanding of what came next. Because reacting fast would have given them something to work with. Silence didn't. Silence let them stay exactly where they were, confident, unaware, exposed. I picked up my phone again, opened a new message thread, and started sending Rachel everything. Photos, notes, timestamps, the neighbor's account. Each piece added to something bigger, something that wasn't visible yet, but was already taking shape. And for the first time since I'd crested that berm, the question shifted. It wasn't just who did it. It was how far they'd gone, without realizing exactly what they'd touched. The HOA office sat on the edge of Pinehurst Estates, tucked into a low stone building that tried hard to look official without actually being anything of the sort. Clean windows, trimmed hedges, a flag out front that moved just enough in the wind to suggest authority. I parked out front at exactly 9. No rush, no hesitation. Inside, the lobby was quiet. A receptionist sat behind the desk, eyes flicking up as I walked in. She didn't ask my name. She didn't have to. "You're here to see Ms. Carver," she said. "I am. She's in a meeting. I'll wait." I took a seat against the wall, hands resting loosely in my lap, and let the room settle around me. The place was designed to feel controlled, managed. Every detail placed exactly where it belonged. like the people running it believed structure alone created authority. 22 minutes later, the door to the back office opened. Linda Carver stepped out. She looked exactly like Megan had described. Mid-50s, impeccably put together. Cream blazer, hair set just right, posture straight like she was walking into a room she already owned. She saw me immediately. Didn't pause, didn't hesitate. If anything, she smiled. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, as if we were meeting for something routine. "I was expecting you." Of course she was. "Ms. Carver," I said, "come in." Her office was neat, papers stacked in clean lines, a portfolio binder set at the center of the desk like it was part of the presentation. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. She didn't. Instead, she remained standing for a moment, hands lightly resting on the edge of the desk, looking down at me with the kind of calm confidence that comes from believing the situation is already under control. "I understand you've returned to your property," she said. "I have. And I imagine you've noticed some changes." "That's one way to put it." She nodded, as if we were agreeing on something reasonable. "We conducted a landscape compliance review during your absence," she said. "The board determined that certain features on your property were inconsistent with the community standards of Pinehurst Estates." I let her continue. She reached for the binder, opened it, and slid a document across the desk toward me. "Our governing documents," she said, "specifically the sections regarding environmental presentation and visual consistency along shared boundaries." I glanced at the page but didn't pick it up. She tapped a paragraph with a manicured finger. "As you can see, the association maintains authority over features that materially impact the aesthetic character of the community." "Aesthetic character," I repeated. "Yes," she said smoothly. "Your water feature, while certainly ambitious, did not align with the standards established by the board." Water feature. I let the words sit there. She continued, voice even, practiced. "The decision to remove it was made after careful consideration. It was not taken lightly." "No," I said. "I'm sure it wasn't." She mistook that for agreement. "The contractors were instructed to handle the matter efficiently and professionally," she added. "Any disruption was minimized." I looked at her. "Minimized?" "Yes." I leaned back slightly in the chair, hands still relaxed. "Did you contact the county before you started?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "That wasn't necessary." "State Water Resources Board?" "The HOA operates under its own governing authority." "Did you review the property records?" I asked. She gave a small, controlled smile. "We maintain survey documentation for all adjacent properties." "That's not what I asked." Her smile tightened just a fraction. "We had sufficient information to proceed," she said. "Did you consult an attorney before authorizing the removal?" "We have legal counsel on retainer," she replied, "and the board acts within the scope of its rights." I nodded once. "All right." She seemed to relax slightly, like the conversation was moving toward a conclusion she expected. Then I asked one more question. "Miss Carver, do you understand what was on my property?" She met my gaze without hesitation. "Yes," she said. "It was an artificial pond that created visual inconsistency along the western boundary." The words were clean, confident, completely wrong. I stood, not abruptly, not aggressively, just enough to change the angle of the conversation. "That wasn't a pond," I said. She didn't move. "It was a state-registered emergency water storage reservoir," I continued. "Permitted through the Colorado Water Resources Board, integrated into a county contingency supply agreement." The silence in the room shifted, not dramatically, but enough. "It holds several million gallons at full capacity," I added. and it's classified as regulated infrastructure under state law. Linda Carver didn't interrupt, didn't argue, but something in her posture changed, just slightly. That's not reflected in the information we were provided, she said carefully. That's because you didn't ask, I replied. Her jaw tightened. The HOA is not required to seek external validation for internal compliance matters, she said. This wasn't an internal matter. It affected the community. It was outside your jurisdiction, I said. That stopped her, not because of the words, because of how they were said, flat, certain, no room for interpretation. She picked up the document on her desk, like it still meant something in the moment. Our authority doesn't extend to state-regulated water assets, I said. The binder sat between us now, open to a page that had nothing to do with what had actually happened. For the first time, she didn't have a prepared line ready. Not immediately. That determination hasn't been established, she said finally. It has, I replied. You just didn't check. The room went quiet. Not tense, not heated, just still. She held her position, but the confidence wasn't as clean as it had been when I walked in. Mr. Caldwell, she said, voice more measured now. If there's been a misunderstanding, there hasn't. I reached for my jacket. This isn't a discussion, I added. It's a record. Her eyes narrowed slightly. A record of what? I paused at the door. Of how this started, I said. Then I opened it and stepped out into the hallway. The receptionist looked up again as I passed, but I didn't slow down. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, clearer, because whatever uncertainty had been there when I drove in was gone. She thought she was enforcing rules. She thought this was about appearance. She thought she was in control. But she wasn't. Not anymore. Because now it wasn't about what she believed. It was about what she'd done, and how much it was going to cost her. I walked to my truck, pulled out my phone, and sent Rachel one message. She confirmed it. Then I added a second. She has no idea what she touched. I hit send. And for the first time since I'd seen the reservoir, I knew exactly where this was going. The only question left was how hard it was going to hit when it got there. The answer started taking shape 3 hours later. Dr. Hannah Pierce stepped out of her truck just before noon, clipboard already in hand, eyes scanning the berm before she even introduced herself. She didn't waste time on greetings. People like her didn't need to. Show me everything, she said. I led her up the rise. She stopped halfway, crouched near one of the tire tracks, and ran her fingers across the hardened clay. No reaction, just observation. How long? She asked. 3 weeks, I said. She nodded once, like that confirmed something she'd already suspected. At the top, she paused. Not for long, but long enough. Then she walked forward and looked out over the basin. Jesus, she muttered. That was the first emotional response I'd heard all day. She moved down the slope without waiting, boots sliding slightly over the cracked surface. I followed at a distance, letting her work. She stopped at the first inlet line. Cut, she said. Not disconnected. Cut. She moved to the next. Same here. Then the third. Consistent pattern. She straightened and looked back toward the berm, tracing the tire tracks with her eyes. They brought heavy equipment straight through your perimeter, she said. No ground protection. No structural consideration. They didn't think they needed it. No, she said. They didn't think at all. She moved toward the center of the basin, stopping near a cluster of fish. She crouched again, examining one of the larger trout. How long have these been exposed? She asked. Couple weeks, maybe more. She nodded slowly. Population's gone, she said. No recovery from this. I didn't respond. She stood and walked further out, scanning the surface, then turned back toward the berm. "Where's your control housing?" she asked. "Up top." We climbed back up together. She stepped inside the open panel, eyes moving over the empty mounts and cut wiring. "They stripped it," she said. "Every component." "Cost?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped back out, looked over the basin again, and then at the berm itself. "Did they drain it fast?" she asked. "Looks like it." "That's a problem." "How big?" She pointed toward a section along the northern edge. "See that shift in the line?" I followed her gaze. It was subtle, but there. A slight dip where the berm's structure had settled unevenly. "That's subsidence," she said. "Rapid drainage pulls pressure off the internal structure too quickly. If they didn't stage it properly, you get instability." "And if it rains?" She looked at me. "You could lose part of the berm." That changed things. Not just damage, risk, ongoing. She made a note on her clipboard, then continued walking the perimeter, documenting everything. Cuts, tracks, disturbed vegetation, exposed pipe ends. Every few minutes, she'd stop and take a photo. Not casually, precisely. Angles that mattered. Details that would hold up later. "How deep was it at capacity?" she asked. 22 feet at the center. She nodded. "And they pulled it all the way down?" "Every gallon." She let out a quiet breath. "That's not landscaping," she said. "That's infrastructure removal." We worked in silence for the next hour. By the time she was done, her clipboard was full, and she had over 100 photos logged. She closed it and looked at me. "Preliminary assessment," she said. "You're looking at total system failure." "Break it down." She did. "Fish population, gone. That's years of ecological establishment wiped out." I nodded. "Clay liner, compromised. You can't just refill this. It'll leak. You'll need a full excavation and relining." "How long?" "Months. Minimum." "Cost?" "6 figures just for that part." She continued. "Inlet network, cut in multiple locations. That's not patchwork. That's replacement. Control system, gone. You're rebuilding from scratch." She paused, then added, "Berm damage, unknown full extent yet. But based on what I'm seeing, you're looking at structural reinforcement at the very least." I let her finish. "And that's just physical damage," she said. "Doesn't include water value, doesn't include business impact, doesn't include regulatory implications." Regulatory. That was the word that mattered. "They filed nothing," I said. "No permits, no notifications." She looked at me sharply. "They didn't notify the state? No. County? No." She stared at me for a second, then shook her head. "That's not just negligence," she said. "That's violation." "How many?" She didn't hesitate. "Multiple." That aligned with what Rachel had hinted at. Hannah stepped back, looking out over the basin one more time. "Who authorized this?" she asked. "HOA President, Linda Carver." She let out a short, incredulous breath. "An HOA did this?" "That's what they think." She closed her clipboard again. "Then they have no idea what they just stepped into." No, they didn't. And that was the problem. Because people who don't understand what they've done don't stop. They keep going. I pulled my phone out and checked the time. Rachel would have everything by now. "Can you have a full report ready?" I asked. 3 days, Hannah said. 14 pages minimum, full breakdown, damage categories, cost projections, structural risk. "Do it." She nodded. "And Ethan," she added, "once this is documented, this doesn't stay small." "I know." She looked at me for another second, like she was measuring something beyond the situation itself. "Good," she said, "because this wasn't going to be a conversation. It wasn't going to be a warning. It was going to be a record. And once it was written, it was going to move. I watched as she walked back to her truck, leaving the basin behind in silence again. The wind moved across the cracked surface, lifting dust in thin lines that drifted and settled again. Everything still looked the same. Empty. Quiet. Like nothing had changed. But that wasn't true anymore. Because now there were numbers attached to it. Damage. Risk. Violations. And those numbers were about to land somewhere. The only thing left to see was how fast the people responsible realized what they were actually facing. It took less than 24 hours. Rachel called me the next morning. "I've reviewed everything," she said. "Permits, registrations, inspection history. You weren't exaggerating." "I don't do that." "I know," she replied, "which is why this is worse." I leaned back in the chair, phone pressed to my ear, eyes on the documents still spread across the desk. "Walk me through it," I said. "All right," she began. "First, your reservoir is fully registered with the State Water Resources Board. That alone puts it outside any HOA authority." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Second, it's listed under a contingency supply agreement with the county. That makes it part of a regulated infrastructure network." I figured. "Third," she continued, "it has an active environmental permit tied to aquatic ecosystem maintenance, which means draining it without oversight triggers multiple violations." "How many?" She didn't hesitate. "At least 14, based on what I'm seeing." 14. Not one mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A chain of them. "State level?" I asked. "State and county," she said. "And depending on how this unfolds, possibly federal implications if water resource interference gets flagged." I let that sit. "All right," I said. "What's our move?" "Documentation first," she replied. "We don't rush this. We build it." That was exactly what I expected. "I've got an engineer report coming in," I said. 3 days. "Good. That's going to anchor damages. We'll pair it with your permits and the physical evidence." "And the HOA?" Rachel paused. "They've already responded." That got my attention. "How?" "Letter came in this morning," she said. "From their attorney." "Let me guess." 2 pages. Heavy on HOA bylaws. Light on anything that actually matters. I almost smiled. "Send it." A second later, the file came through. I opened it and scanned the first paragraph. Standard language, formal tone, repeated references to governing authority, community standards, and board discretion. Nothing about state law. Nothing about permits. Nothing about jurisdiction. "They're doubling down," I said. "They don't know what they're in yet," Rachel replied. "They think this is internal." "It's not." "No," she said. "It's not." I kept reading. "They're asking for resolution through internal grievance procedures," I added. "Of course they are," Rachel said. "That's where they have control. And outside that, they have none." I set the phone on speaker and leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "So we decline." "Immediately," she said. "This doesn't go through their system. We take it straight to court." "And timing?" "Fast," she replied, "but not sloppy. We file once the engineer report lands. That gives us damages, structural risk, and environmental impact in one package." I nodded. "And Rachel?" "Yeah, they stripped equipment, cut lines. That's not just oversight failure." "I know," she said. "That's intentional interference. And if we can prove knowledge—" Her voice trailed slightly. "We will," I said. She didn't argue. "Then this escalates," she said, significantly. I looked down at the photos I'd taken the day before. The cuts, the missing components, the tire tracks carved into the basin. They supervised it, I said. Neighbor saw her out there multiple times. Good, Rachel replied. We'll need that statement. And we'll pull contractor records. They'll show who hired them. And who paid them, she added. Exactly. Because money leaves a trail. And this one had been moving for 3 weeks. Rachel, I said, they think this is a landscaping dispute. That's because they've never dealt with anything bigger, she replied. They have now. Yes, she said, they have. There was a brief silence on the line. Not uncertainty. Alignment. File preservation notice goes out today, she said. Emails, internal communications, meeting records. Everything. Good. And Ethan? Yeah. When this hits, it's not going to stay contained to the HOA. I'm counting on that. Then we do it right, she said. Always. We ended the call. I sat there for a moment, looking at the letter on the screen again. 2 pages of confidence. 2 pages of assumptions. 2 pages written by someone who believed authority came from repetition, not verification. They cited their rules 11 times, but not once, Dumont, did they cite actual law. That told me everything. I stood, gathered the documents from the desk, and stacked them cleanly. Permits, registrations, inspection reports. All of it aligned, all of it clear. Everything they'd ignored. Outside, I could hear the faint sound of a vehicle passing along the distant road. Normal life continuing, unaware. I stepped out onto the back porch and looked toward the berm again. Still quiet, still empty, still waiting. But not for long, because now the case wasn't just forming, it was moving. Rachel would send the preservation notice. Hannah would finalize the damage report. The contractors would get pulled in. The records would start surfacing. And once that happened, everything they'd said, done, and assumed would be laid out in a way they couldn't control. I pulled my phone out again and typed a short message to Rachel. Proceed. Then I added one more line. No negotiations. I hit send. Because this wasn't about compromise. It was about correction. And the deeper I looked at what they'd done, the clearer it became. They hadn't just crossed a line. They'd built an entire operation on the assumption that the line didn't exist. And now, they were about to find out exactly where it was. It started with the records. Rachel's preservation notice went out that afternoon. Formal, direct, and impossible to ignore. Every board member, every internal account, every contractor tied to the project was legally required to retain communications. No deletions, no lost files, no quiet cleanups. And for the first 48 hours, nothing happened. No response, no follow-up letter, no attempt to renegotiate. Just silence, which told me more than anything they could have said. They were regrouping, trying to figure out what they'd stepped into, trying to decide how much of it they could still control. On the 3rd day, Hannah's report came in. 14 pages, clean, precise, brutal. I read it once, then again slower the second time. Every line confirmed what we already knew and expanded it. Total ecological loss, complete infrastructure failure, structural instability in the berm, projected restoration timeline, 18 to 24 months. Estimated cost, high 6 figures just to begin stabilization, 7 figures to fully restore. That didn't include lost utility value, didn't include business disruption, didn't include regulatory exposure. By the time I finished reading, Rachel had already integrated it into the case file. We're filing tomorrow, she said over the phone. Full complaint, no partial claims. Good. And Ethan, she added, we're naming Linda directly. Not just the HOA? No, she said. Not just the HOA. That mattered, because organizations absorb damage. Individuals feel it. What about the board? I asked. They'll come in through discovery, she said. But based on what we've seen so far, this decision didn't spread evenly. Meaning one thing. Linda Carver drove it. Then we focus there, I said. We will, Rachel replied. The filing went out the next morning. Formal complaint. 14 statutory violations listed. Damages outlined. Evidence attached. And once it was filed, the response came fast. The HOA's attorney called within hours. Not a letter this time. A call. Rachel took it. I listened in. This is escalating unnecessarily, the attorney said, voice tight but controlled. We're prepared to discuss resolution. You had that opportunity before the drainage began, Rachel cut in. This was a misunderstanding of scope. It was a removal of regulated infrastructure without jurisdiction. A pause. We disagree with that characterization, the attorney said. Then we'll let the court clarify it, Rachel replied. Another pause, longer this time. You're exposing your client to unnecessary litigation, he said. No, Rachel said calmly. Your client did that themselves. The call ended there. No agreement, no negotiation, just confirmation. They were feeling it now. But they still didn't understand how deep it went. That came next. Discovery. Requests went out across every layer of the HOA structure. Board meeting minutes, internal communications, contractor invoices, authorization records, legal consultations, everything tied to the decision. And then the first response came back. Rachel called me that evening. We've got something, she said. Good or bad? Depends on which side you're on. I didn't respond. She continued. Board meeting minutes, 6 weeks before the drainage started. Go on. They discussed your reservoir 3 separate times. Anything about permits? No. County? No. State? No. That tracked. What did they discuss, Fuss? I asked. Aesthetics, she said. Property values. Visibility from the western boundary. I almost smiled. They voted on it? Yes. 3-2. Yes. That matched Megan's account exactly. Anything else? I asked. There was a pause. Yes, Rachel said. That tone again. Measured. Focused. The final meeting just before they approved the drainage. There's a note. What kind of note? A statement attributed to Linda. I leaned forward slightly. Read it. Rachel didn't hesitate. The property owner is rarely present. If we act now, the matter can be resolved before any objections are raised. Silence settled in. Not shock, not anger, just confirmation. She planned it around my absence, I said. Yes. That helps. It does, Rachel agreed. But that's not the main issue. What is? Another pause, then. We received partial email records. Partial? Enough. Show me. A moment later, the file came through. I opened it, scrolled once, then stopped. One message, time-stamped late evening, from Linda Carver's personal account. Short, direct, no hesitation. Go ahead and proceed with the drainage. He won't dare sue. And even if he does, HOA has more money than he does. I read it twice. Not because I needed to, because it was that clean, that complete. No ambiguity, no interpretation required. Just intent. Clear, deliberate. I leaned back in the chair, phone still in my hand. Ethan? Rachel said. I see it. That changes everything, she added. It does. Because this wasn't about misunderstanding anymore. It wasn't about overreach. It wasn't about misapplied authority. It was about choice. She knew. She chose to proceed anyway. And she believed she could win. Because of resources. Because of position. Because of control. She was wrong. I set the phone down slowly. Add punitive damages, I said. Rachel didn't hesitate. Already drafting it? Good. Ethan, she added. Once this goes in, there's no stepping back. I'm not stepping back. I didn't think you were. We ended the call. I sat there for a moment, looking at the message still open on the screen. 3 weeks of damage, years of work destroyed, all built on one assumption, that I wouldn't fight, that even if I did, it wouldn't matter. I closed the file, because now, it did. And the next phase wasn't about proving what happened. That part was already done. Now, it was about showing exactly who made it happen and how much it was going to cost them. The contractors came first. Rachel tracked them through the HOA's financial records, invoice numbers, payment logs, vendor registrations. It didn't take long. A company called Griggs Utility Services, local, mid-sized, the kind that took municipal jobs when they could get them, and apparently HOA work when they were told it was authorized. Tom Griggs agreed to talk. Not immediately, not eagerly, but he didn't refuse. We met in his office 2 days later. No lawyers present. Just him, a metal desk, and a stack of job folders he hadn't touched since the work ended. I didn't know what it was, he said within the first 5 minutes. Rachel didn't respond. Just let him keep talking. They told us it was a pond, he continued. Said it needed to be drained for compliance. Gave us written authorization through the HOA. Who gave it to you? Rachel asked. Linda Carver, he said. Directly. That lined up. She was on site? I asked. Tom nodded. Multiple times. First day, midway through, end of the job. She checked progress, gave instructions. What kind of instructions? Rachel pressed. Keep it moving, he said. Don't slow down. She didn't want it dragging out. That tracked with the drainage pattern. Fast, uncontrolled, no staging. Did anyone question the work? I asked. Tom hesitated, then nodded. Second week, he said. One of my guys asked if we had clearance. Said it didn't feel right draining something that size without permits. And? Rachel asked. Tom leaned back slightly. She told him if he wasn't comfortable, he could leave, he said. Said the HOA had full authority over anything affecting the community boundary. Rachel made a note. And he stayed? Tom nodded. He needed the job. That was the pattern. Confidence from the top. Compliance from everyone else. Did you document the work? Rachel asked. Tom slid a folder across the desk. Photos, standard procedure. Insurance requires it. I opened it. The first image showed the pumps being set up. The second, hoses running down into the reservoir. The third, Linda Carver standing at the edge of the berm, watching. I flipped through the rest. Day-by-day progression. Water levels dropping. Equipment moving deeper. Mud turning to exposed clay. And in multiple shots, her, present, observing, in control. She was there more than I expected, Tom said. Most clients don't show up like that. She wasn't a client, I said. Rachel glanced at me, then back at Tom. Did she ever mention legal clearance? She asked. No, he said. Just kept repeating the same thing. What? That it was authorized. That the HOA had already approved everything. Rachel closed her notebook. Thank you, she said. We'll be in touch if needed." Tom nodded, but didn't look relieved, because somewhere along the way, he'd figured it out too. This wasn't just a job. It was evidence. We left the office with the folder in hand. But that wasn't the piece that changed everything. That came later. Back at the house, I pulled up the system I hadn't checked yet. Security. Not because I was worried about theft, because of the equipment. Years ago, when I installed the control systems for the reservoir, I added cameras. 3 angles, full coverage, continuous recording, automatically backed up to an off-site server. I hadn't thought about them in months. Didn't need to. Until now. I logged in, pulled the archive, selected the date range Megan had given me, and hit play. The first clip loaded. Truck headlights cutting across the berm. Early morning. Setup phase. Workers unloading equipment. No hesitation. No secrecy. Second clip. Pumps running. Water starting to move. Hoses anchored deep. Third clip. 2 days later. Water level already dropping. Faster than it should have. Then, frame by frame, the pattern built. Day 5. Day 9. Day 14. Each clip showed the same thing. Work continuing. Progress accelerating. And then, she appeared. Linda Carver. Clear. Unmistakable. Standing at the edge of the reservoir, hands folded. Watching. In one clip, she stepped closer to the crew chief, pointing toward the center basin. In another, she stood on the newly exposed ground, speaking on her phone while the pumps ran behind her. No uncertainty, no hesitation. Control. I kept watching, clip after clip, each one adding weight, each one removing doubt, until I hit the 14th day. That was the one. The camera on the northern fence post picked it up. A worker approached her, body language tense, hesitant. He said something. I turned the audio up. Not perfect, but enough. Should check permits. Her response came clear enough. If he sues, the association will handle it. A pause. Then, we have more resources than he does. Same assumption, same mistake, captured in real time. I stopped the video, sat back, and let the silence settle. This wasn't just documentation anymore. This was proof, intent, awareness, decision. Rachel called 10 minutes later. I assume you've seen it, she said. I have. Send me everything, she added. Raw files, timestamps, backup logs. Already exporting. There was a pause on her end. Then, this ends it, she said. No, I replied. This starts it. Because now, there was nothing left to argue, nothing left to reinterpret, nothing left to defend. They didn't just approve it. They didn't just ignore the law. They stood there, watched it happen, and made sure it continued. And once that got in front of a jury, it wouldn't matter what they believed. It would matter what they did. I sent the files, all of them. Then I closed the system and stood up, walking out to the back porch again. The berm sat quiet in the distance, the basin still empty, still waiting. But not for long, because now the question wasn't whether they'd realize what they'd done. They would. The footage made sure of that. The real question was what they'd do when they understood. There was no way out of it. They tried denial first. Linda's attorney filed a response within a week of receiving the footage. Same tone as before. Controlled, confident, carefully worded. The claim was simple. The HOA had acted in good faith based on internal governance. They leaned on that phrase hard. Good faith. They said the board believed it had authority, that any damage was an unintended consequence of a reasonable decision, that no one had intended harm. Rachel read the filing once, then closed it. They're out of options, she said. Not yet, I replied. No, she agreed, but they're getting there. Discovery moved fast after that, faster than they expected. Every document they had, emails, minutes, invoices, was now part of the record. Every statement they'd made internally was now something we could place in sequence, compare, and expose. And then the footage was entered. Not as a summary, not as still images, full clips, time-stamped, unedited. Rachel filed it as supplemental evidence 3 weeks before trial. Linda's team pushed back immediately, motioned to exclude, claimed it was prejudicial, claimed it lacked context. Judge Whitaker denied it in under 24 hours. Relevant and admissible, he ruled. That was the moment the case shifted. Not for us, for them. Because until then, they'd still been operating under the assumption that this was a matter of interpretation. Now it wasn't. It was a matter of record. The courtroom filled early on the first day of trial. Not just residents from Pinehurst, people from outside the county. Word had spread. Not about me. About what had happened. About the idea that an HOA had drained a private reservoir and what that might mean. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Rachel, documents arranged cleanly in front of us. Across the room, Linda Carver sat with her attorneys, same posture as before, same controlled expression. But there was something different now. Less certainty, more calculation. Judge Harold Whitaker entered at exactly 9. 19 years on the bench. No wasted movement. No unnecessary words. He took his seat, reviewed the filings briefly, then looked up. Proceed. Rachel stood. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just facts. She walked the court through the sequence. Return from Alaska. Discovery of the damage. HOA authorization. Contractor involvement. And then, she began laying out the documents. Permits first. State registration. County agreements. Environmental approvals. Each one entered into evidence. Each one explained clearly. No interpretation required. Then Hannah's report. 14 pages. Damage categories. Structural risk. Cost projections. Rachel didn't rush it. Didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. When she called me to the stand, I kept it simple. No speeches. No emotion. Just answers. What was the reservoir? She asked. A state-registered emergency water storage system, I said. Was it permitted? Yes. Was it part of any public infrastructure agreements? Yes. County contingency supply. Did you authorize its removal? No. That was all that mattered. Across the room, Linda's attorney took notes. No objections, no interruptions, because there was nothing to object to. Then Rachel introduced the email, printed, highlighted, placed into evidence. She read it aloud. Go ahead and proceed with the drainage. He won't dare sue. And even if he does, HOA has more money than he does. The room went quiet. Not dramatic, just still. Because intent doesn't need explanation when it's written that clearly. Linda didn't react, didn't look down, didn't look away. But the shift was there, subtle, permanent. Then the footage played. Clip 1, pumps starting. Clip 2, water level dropping. Clip 3, Linda standing at the edge of the berm, watching. Clip after clip, day after day. Presence, supervision, control. When the 14th day clip played, the one with audio, the room leaned forward without realizing it. Should check permits, her response came through the speakers. If he sues, the association will handle it. We have more resources than he does. Rachel didn't say anything after that. Didn't need to. She just let the silence sit. Judge Whitaker didn't interrupt. Didn't react visibly. But he was watching. Every second of it. The defense tried. They argued good faith. Said Linda believed she had authority. Said she relied on HOA rules. Said there was no malicious intent. But good faith doesn't survive documentation like that. Not when you ignore questions. Not when you proceed anyway. Not when you assume power replaces law. Their expert tried to challenge the damage assessment. Said the costs were inflated. Said recovery timelines were exaggerated. Then Hannah took the stand and walked through every number, every estimate, every projection. Line by line. No hesitation. No gaps. When the court-appointed evaluators submitted their independent report, higher in 2 categories than ours, the defense stopped pushing that argument. Because now, to most, it wasn't our numbers. It was the court's. By the time closing arguments came, the structure was clear. Rachel kept hers short. This case is not about misunderstanding, she said. It is about action taken without authority, without verification, and with full awareness of the risk. Then she sat down. The defense spoke longer, tried to reframe, tried to soften, tried to introduce doubt where there wasn't any left. It didn't land. The jury didn't need to be convinced. They needed to decide how much it mattered. Deliberations lasted a day and 6 hours. I didn't wait in the courtroom, didn't pace, didn't speculate. Some outcomes don't need guessing. They need time. When we were called back in, the room filled again. Same people, same seats, different energy. The foreman stood. Judge Whitaker nodded. Read the verdict. The room held its breath. And for the first time since this started, there was nothing left to analyze, nothing left to build, nothing left to prove. Only one question remained. How much was it going to cost her? On the matter of damages, the foreman said, voice steady but tight, we find in favor of the plaintiff. No reaction, no movement, just the sound of paper shifting as he continued. Actual damages in the amount of $4 million. A pause, long enough for it to land. Then, punitive damages in the amount of $8 million. $12 million. The number didn't echo. It settled, heavy, final, exact. No one spoke. No one needed to. I didn't look at Rachel. Didn't look at the jury. I looked across the room, at Linda Carver. She didn't move. Didn't flinch. Sat exactly the way she had all trial. Back straight, hands folded, eyes forward. For a second, it almost looked like nothing had changed. Then, Qualtas. Slowly, she lowered her head. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Just enough to break the line. That was it. That was the shift. Judge Whitaker reviewed the verdict without comment, then set the document down. The court accepts the findings, he said. His voice was calm, measured, but there was weight behind it now. Based on the evidence presented, the court also finds sufficient cause to refer this matter to the county attorney's office for review of potential criminal violations. That got a reaction. Not from Linda, from her attorney. A slight movement, a tightening. Because civil damage is one thing. Criminal exposure is something else entirely. Proceedings are concluded, the judge added. He stood, and just like that, it was over. Not the consequences, just the part where anyone could argue about them. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Not lighter, clearer. Rachel stepped beside me. "Clean verdict," she said. "Yeah. No reductions, no splits, full alignment." "They saw it. They couldn't miss it," she replied. We stood there for a moment, watching people file out of the building. Some looked at us, most didn't, because to them, this wasn't personal. It was a story, a case, something to talk about later. To me, it was just correction. "Appeals?" I asked. "They'll try," Rachel said. "But the record's solid. It holds." "And the HOA?" She exhaled slightly. "They're already distancing," she said. "New board meeting scheduled. Emergency restructuring." That didn't surprise me. Organizations protect themselves, even if it means cutting someone loose. "What about her?" I asked. Rachel didn't answer immediately. "She's exposed," she said finally. "Insurance won't cover punitive damages. Not with that email. Not with the footage." Meaning one thing. The $8 million was hers. Personally. I nodded once. "That's what happens when you assume you're untouchable," Rachel added. I didn't respond, because it wasn't about punishment. Not really. It was about outcome, cause, effect, nothing more. Months passed. The legal process didn't end at the verdict. Appeals were filed, denied, reviewed again, upheld, each step slower than the last. But none of it changed the result. The number stayed the same. The responsibility stayed where it was placed. And over time, the rest followed. Linda Carver sold her house, quietly. No announcement, no explanation. Just a listing that appeared one week and was gone the next. She stepped down from every position she held. Board, committees, local organizations, one by one. Gone. The HOA restructured. New leadership, new rules, explicit limits, written where they couldn't be ignored. Not because they wanted to change, because they had to. Because now they knew. What happened when you didn't? The Reservoir took longer. 2 years, start to finish. Excavation. Relining. Structural reinforcement. New control systems better than before. Stronger. Built with the kind of attention that only comes after something fails. Hannah stayed on through the process. So did Rachel. Different roles, same purpose. Correction. The first time water started flowing back in, it was slow, measured, controlled. The way it should have been the first time. No rush, no shortcuts, just a system doing what it was designed to do. By the following fall, the surface held steady again. Not full, not yet, but enough. Enough to reflect the sky, enough to hold life. I stood at the top of the berm one evening, hands in my pockets, watching the water settle. No noise, no movement, just stillness. Megan walked up beside me after a while. "Looks like it belongs again," she said. "It does." She nodded. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then she asked the question most people would have asked much earlier. Was it worth it? I thought about that. About the time, the cost, the process, the loss. Then I looked out across the water again, at something that had been built, taken, and built again. "It wasn't about worth," I said. She glanced at me. "Then what was it?" I let the question sit for a second, then answered. "Some things don't change based on what people think they can get away with," I said. They change based on whether you let them. Megan nodded slowly, like she understood, or maybe like she didn't need to. The water moved slightly in the distance, barely noticeable, but there, steady, uninterrupted, exactly the way it was meant to be. And that was enough, because in the end, this was never about revenge. It was about restoring what was already mine, and making sure no one tried to take it that way again.
The truth is, the lesson here isn't about winning a case or proving someone wrong. It's about knowing what you have, documenting it properly, and having the patience to let the truth do its work. If Ethan had rushed in angry, if you reacted instead of preparing, this could go very differently. What protected him wasn't force, it was clarity, record, and the discipline to stand still when it mattered most. Out here, Lane teaching you that not everything needs noise to be defended. Something just needs time, consistency, and the willingness to stand your ground the right way. And when you do that, things tend to settle where they belong. If you ever deal with an HOA or anyone who thought they had more authority than they really did, drop a justice in the comments. I'd like to hear your story. And if you believe in quiet strength, in doing things the right way even when it's slower, go ahead and subscribe. There's more stories like this, real lessons, real land, and the kind of resolve that doesn't need to shout to be heard.